Welcome to the first video of Section 4 of Rapid Flask. In the last section, we added functionality to allow the user to search for custom cities, and added some style to our app. In this section, we'll complete the development of our weather app, and then give an overview of some more advanced Flask functionality. In this video, we'll take a look at how to save the user's most recent search in a browser session or cookie, and display weather data for that city. A cookie is simply a key-value pair stored in the user's browser for a specified period of time. If the user visits our site again within the time frame, using the same browser, the cookie will automatically be sent to our server, so that we can remember specific information about the user. In Flask, setting cookies is easy. We need another import for makeResponse, as we'll need to build up a response object in order to set the cookie. We'll also need an import for the datetime module, to set when the cookie expires. We'll use the request module we imported earlier to read the cookies. Getting the city is now a three-step fallback process. First, we check to see if the user has entered a search term, and if he or she has, we use this as our city. If not, we see if a cookie was previously set by looking for a specific cookie in request.cookies. If that also does not exist, we fall back to our default of London. We set the cookie whenever the user enters a search term. Instead of rendering the template directly, we create a response object, which is ready to render the template with all the parameters as before. Then we add a cookie to the response using the setCookie method. By default, the cookie will expire when the user's browser is closed, which is not what we want, so we'll use the expires argument, which takes a Python datetime object. We can use time delta to easily create a date object with a value of 365 days from today, which means that the user will keep their default city for a year after they search for it, unless they clear their cookies. Let's take a look at the result. We can search for Berlin, close the browser, reopen it, revisit the site, and we'll see we get directed to Berlin by default. This is great, but sometimes we might want to search for a city and not override our favorite one. For example, if we're visiting another town, but still want our hometown to be default. So let's add a checkbox to prevent the cookie from being set. First, in our template file, we'll add an HTML checkbox to our form, which will be checked by default. Now, when we submit our query, remember equals on will automatically be passed in the URL as a get parameter. But if the checkbox is unchecked before the submit button is pressed, then the parameter won't be set. Then, in our Python file, we'll check if the checkbox is on before setting the cookie by adding an if statement when building up our response. Note that if the remember parameter is present, it'll be on, as it won't exist if the user has unchecked it, so we don't need to check its value. Let's just check that this works, and then we'll be done with our weather app. Our default is still Berlin, so if we search for New York and uncheck the remember box, it should keep the default as Berlin. That works. If we leave the box checked, it'll change our default to New York. Perfect. In this video, we completed the development of our weather app, and our user can now set a default city to prevent the need of searching for it every time. We're now done with the majority of the course. Our app is very simple and clean though, and many web applications require, among other things, a database, more complicated user input forms, account control to allow users to log in with a username and password, and some form of security. In the next and final video, we'll take a brief look at several of the best Flask plugins, which greatly facilitate these more complicated features. See you then.